Part 1. Living alone. In some countries, many more people are choosing to live alone nowadays than in the past. Do you think this is a positive or negative development? In recent years, it has become far more normal for people to live alone, particularly in large cities in the developed world. In my opinion, this trend could have both positive and negative consequences in equal measure. The rise in one-person households can be seen as positive for both personal and broader economic reasons. On an individual level, people who choose to live alone may become more independent and self-reliant than those who live with family members. A young adult who lives alone, for example, will need to learn to cook, clean, pay bills, and manage his or her budget, all of which are valuable life skills. An increase in the number of such individuals can certainly be seen as a positive development. From an economic perspective, the trend towards living alone will result in greater demand for housing. This is likely to benefit the construction industry, estate agents, and a whole host of other companies that rely on homeowners to buy their products or services. However, the personal and economic arguments given above can be considered from the opposite angle. Firstly, rather than the positive feeling of increased independence, people who live alone may experience feelings of loneliness, isolation, and worry. They miss out on the emotional support and daily conversation that family or flatmates can provide, and they must bear the weight of all household bills and responsibilities. In this sense, perhaps the trend towards living alone is a negative one. Secondly, from the financial point of view, a rise in demand for housing is likely to push up property prices and rents. While this may benefit some businesses, the general population, including those who live alone, will be faced with rising living costs. In conclusion, the increase in one-person households will have both beneficial and detrimental effects on individuals and on the economy. Part 2. Salary and job satisfaction. The most important consideration when choosing any career or job is having a high income. To what extent do you agree or disagree? It is widely accepted that, for most people, their daily working lives will not be spent in their dream jobs. Despite this, I do not feel that people should instead prioritize becoming a higher earner above all other concerns. To begin with, I strongly believe that people need stimulation in their daily working lives in order to feel a sense of reward. Very few of us can go through an entire career staying in a position or an industry that we find boring purely for the financial incentive. Secondly, there are so many people who see their working life as a search for fulfillment and contentment in helping others, rather than a search for wealth. It seems unlikely that the priority for, say, every nurse or teacher in the world is to become well off, and jobs such as these are rarely well paid. Despite this, some would argue that those people who have families to support should always prioritize earning a high income. After all, it means securing their children's future. Others point out that, as the job market becomes increasingly unstable across the globe, it is vital to earn more than therefore save more. However, I do not agree that a good salary should necessarily be the number one concern for everyone. Too many people become preoccupied with the next pay rise or career move, and eventually become unhappy or even depressed, neither of which helps them to save or to provide for their family. In summary, earning as much money as is humanly possible should not be anyone's main concern. Granted, it arguably brings financial stability for individuals and for their families, but it is simply not worth tolerating a lifetime of unhappiness at work purely for the money. Part 3. Obesity. Obesity is now a major global epidemic. What can be done to tackle this increasingly common problem? Obesity is now one of the main causes of preventable death, especially in industrialized countries. To tackle this problem, governments can reduce the impact of their overweight citizens by the careful use of taxation to fund alternatives to a sedentary lifestyle. However, individuals should also take responsibility for their own health by avoiding a bad diet and taking the initiative to participate in sport. It is important for governments to act quickly to curb obesity because of the rising death rate. There will also be rising costs in healthcare and the benefits system if it is left unchecked. To combat this problem, governments should, first of all, heavily tax junk food and use the revenue generated to subsidize healthy fruit and vegetables. This would make healthy food cheaper and more widely available than unhealthier options. Also, the government can act by funding leisure centers, sports clubs, and gyms. This money could be used to help people gain motivation to exercise and become more active. On the other hand, there are those who claim that obesity is due to lifestyle choice and therefore an individual problem, not one for the government. They claim that people should find their own motivation to prevent obesity by being aware of the potentially fatal consequences of their lifestyles. Individuals could also change their diets by switching from a carbohydrate-heavy diet to one which includes a balance of vitamins and minerals. Joining a sports club need not always be the only way to lose weight. Even vigorous housework or heavy gardening can help avert heart disease. In conclusion, although individuals may be able to help themselves by changing their diets and activities, it may require government intervention to tackle obesity quickly and on a large scale. Part 4. Advertising. Today, the high sales of popular consumer goods reflect the power of advertising and not the real needs of the society in which they are sold. To what extent do you agree or disagree? It is true that we are increasingly surrounded by advertising by companies that want to sell us their products. To some extent, I agree that advertising has an impact on sales, but I would also argue that we do need most of the goods that we buy. Advertisements can certainly tempt people to buy products that they might not otherwise want. A good example could be the mobile phone. Every year people can be seen queuing to buy the latest models, even when they already have a perfectly good phone that does not need replacing. Perhaps it is the influence of marketing that leads us to make these kinds of decisions. We want to stay up to date with the latest fashions or own the newest high-status device. The high sales of the iPhone seem to support this idea. On the other hand, I believe that most people do not buy products because of the advertising alone. There are other good reasons why we make these choices, and there must be some kind of need before a person makes a purchase. New versions of products almost always have improved features that buyers may want. A new car, for example, may have greatly improved safety features, or it may be more economical to run, or it may pollute less. A new phone may allow the user to communicate more quickly or effectively, thus enhancing their quality of life. In conclusion, while advertising obviously influences our buying behavior, I do not agree that people make decisions that go against their real